do we see a recession soon? And B, what does that do to the housing market? I'm sure that's why everyone wants, this is a good topic for everyone. So by your best estimation, does this push us, since we've kicked the can down the road so far, and now we're tackling it softly instead of tackling it? So rates don't go up really high, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. Does that push us faster into recession?
So I pulled numbers on historically what we've seen when we've had high inflation and tackled it and gone into a recession, which was the 70s, 80s, and then the 90s and early 2000s, for like as an example. But I mean, usually once we hit high inflation, we start tackling it. We usually we've in the past gone to a recession within 1 to 2 years, like in a couple of years. I think it depends on what the Fed sticks to, since they said they are going to be aggressive. I'm not a fortune teller, but I think I was like crystal ball and fortune teller merged together into a word. No, but honestly, it depends on what the Fed does, because they'll say they'll do something and then they've retracted a little bit, with each time with how aggressive they've gotten. So it depends on how aggressive they'll get and how that will affect if we go into a recession and how soon we go into a recession. Right now, with things that I've seen and things that we are seeing, it looks like that's the way that we're headed. But it really will depend on what those decisions are made by the Fed. What I think is that if you're looking to buy right now, and if you're concerned about interest rates, I would be in a lock bias stance. And most likely knowing that if we do hit a recession always causes mortgage rates to go down. So if in the past, historically, so knowing
that, if you look at 2008, they went down. I mean, you went from an adjustable rate, but I mean, rates, from 2008 till last year went down pretty, they did a slow trickle down.
Yeah. So like, if we look in like the 70s and 80s, like when we had a bad inflation where it went from 7%, we're at about 8% right now in inflation, just so everyone knows. So in the 70s and 80s, we went from 7% to 14% in inflation. Mortgage rates went from 12% to 18%. Back in the day when that was a good rate. But then with the inflation response, with combating it, and the Fed got the inflation down from 14% to 5%. And it caused mortgage rates to go from 18% to 12%. And then in the 90s, we went from mortgage rates being 7% to 8.5% with the inflation. And then once the Fed fund rate was increased, the inflation response went from 3.5 to 1%. And then mortgage rates went from 8.5% to 5.5%. So every time that we've had those, 2008 was a little different because 2008 was kind of a manufactured recession. It wasn't a natural recession in the sense that it had more to do with the bad and poor practices happening with putting people in bad loans and other things going on. But if we tackle the inflation issue, inflation comes down. Even if we have a if we have a recession, we should see the mortgage rates go down. That historically, that is the trend, and that should be what's happening, or not what's happening, but should happen if we go there.
When you talk to people about interest rates, do you pull out tarot cards?
No. That'd be a fun trick, though.
Yeah. So what's interesting, there's so many layers of this. So if we see a recession, which it could be pretty likely depending on the moves we make going forward. When I say me, I don't mean we, I mean the powers that be. But should we see a recession, you're saying potentially rates would come down. The problem then is with a recession, how many people actually lose their jobs, right? So then how many people can actually afford? Does that mean prices come back down if we see a recession? Or does that just mean prices stagnate? So this is a good question for you, Ian, and actually all of us. And then here's the question right here. Do you think prices will rise in Austin more since more people will try to buy before interest rates rise? I think this is a dual-sided question, right? Do you think that what'll happen in the market if we see recession. But do you think that prices are going to continue to rise between now and that recession happens?
Ian, did you want to answer first, or do you want?
Oh my gosh. I mean, you're the lender. I think you should answer your way, and then I'll go after that.
Okay. So I think what's interesting about what we're going through right now and what will tie into this question is that we still have a huge demand in the market. We have a huge lack of supply. In previous recessions, we didn't have an issue with lack of supply and huge demand and nowhere to go. So I think, prices in Austin, they could go down. I think if anything, they would probably stay flat and maybe slightly increase, because this is a personal opinion, just because we still have people out there that need to get into homes. And I think that as far as like work and everything else, even if we're in a recession, a lot of people work remotely and work in tech and all these other things. And we're like a big hub for that, with everyone moving here and a lot of jobs that were created here, versus maybe some places that are more in the suburbs or rural areas. So I think in Austin, I couldn't imagine seeing a huge decline in pricing. But again, we don't have any like historical data to base what a recession with lack of supply looks like either. So that's why I think it'll be very different.
What's pretty interesting, I was explaining this to a client that called me today. I have a question for you. Let me not forget this question is, are we still seeing a reduction in the amount of new applications? So I want to talk about that in a second. But to my point was that if you're comparing 08 till now, which everybody likes to do, there's a couple of things that are really at play here that are different. Number one, we have more people in that 33 to 40 buying age than we did in 08. So that is a difference. And you brought this up, and I've used your graphics and videos showing that there has been an increase in that buying pool. Two, in 08, there was 3.7 million homes available. We're at 900,000. It's really, really low. I mean, in Austin, we're at 0.3 of a month. And it's crazy is the suburbs around Austin are actually, I can show the numbers. I put this in my video that came out Tuesday, that Austin was increasing much faster. In fact, here's the if you're looking at just the Austin numbers, the blue line represents 2021. I took out 2020 on accident. And the red line represents 2019. If you look at 2019 and 2021, they're pretty similar. One grows a lot faster, right? But the overall trends are the same. And if we look at the yellow line, which is so far this year, we've gone up 15 grand from January till now, a much flatter rate than we saw. In fact, it's more of more closely follows 2019. But what's interesting is that we do have a much higher buyer pool. The unfortunate part is with rates going up, gas prices going up, that affordability issue is now becoming into play. If we didn't have inflation creeping up like this, we didn't have gas prices going up, this conflicts, would people be able to afford more? So the question becomes, how will this impact prices going forward? And you kind of answered the question there. I think prices are going to be a lot tamer than they are. I think it would be a hell of a lot worse if we were at 3 months inventory. If we were at 2.7, like generally the highest I've seen going back to like 2017, the most I really saw was like 2.7 months inventory. If we were at that, I think that would be the catalyst to really push prices down. I just don't see us getting that high. And I was showing a client today, like right now it's Wednesday. For the last few Wednesdays, I always gauge the week on Wednesdays, because Wednesday, most of the stuff goes pending that listed the following Thursday by Wednesday, right? You're negotiating, you start taking off, you start, negotiating and putting it as pending in the MLS by like Wednesday. As I'm one of those people who likes to wait for checks to get the title before I put it to pending. So if you look at today, it's like 1,800 listings. If you looked at Saturday, it was 2,300 listings around there, Ian, right? So 500 have dropped off already. Now we'll probably have 500 hit, but this Wednesday was about the same as the previous Wednesday, and it's pretty close to the previous. So we're about 200 units higher than what we saw probably in January, but that's not a lot. And so I think we will see more inventory, but do we get up to a month? Do we get up to a month and a half? Do we get up to 2 months? That's where I think it's going to take agents and people really paying attention to what's happening with the inventory and all of this other stuff, because I think prices won't be flatter this year. Problem is that am I wrong? Am I wrong? And when I say am I wrong, is that our price is going to escalate faster than I'm anticipating. That's where I think. Thanks for watching this short of the Real Amigos podcast. For more live streams, hit here. For more clips, hit here. We'll catch you on the next one.